Hello and welcome to The Real Talk. Today we have our lovely guest, Courtney, who is going to be talking about forestry and working in a male-dominated industry. Welcome, Courtney. I'm so excited to have you here on The Real Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you work in a male-dominated industry and you've been in that field for quite some time, and we're going to go through all of that today. So let's go back to your high school days. You originally had wanted a completely different career path that didn't pan out. So what was that original path and how did you end up choosing forestry?
I actually wanted to be a nurse my whole life. I don't think I actually knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I have a lot of nurses in my family. So I figured, well, I guess I got to be a nurse. Everyone else is a nurse. When I was in high school, I actually got conditional acceptance to university for nursing. Unfortunately, when I was done high school, I encountered a bit of homelessness and I wasn't actually able to go through with that. I know that people go through school all the time with like financial issues, but being freshly 18, I didn't really have the tools to kind of deal with that at that point in my life. So I didn't go to school for quite a few years after high school. And I had actually met up with one of my old high school teachers, my old math teacher. We met for dinner one time and I was kind of explaining to her, like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't really want to spend the time upgrading to go back into nursing programs because they're so incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like competitive?
Competitive, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to do. Maybe I'm not cut out for university. I don't know where to go from here. And she was the one who kind of was like, don't totally just dismiss college programs and trade schools because a lot of people get really good high paying jobs from them. And so I kind of thought, I was like, because I kind of had this idea in my head that if it wasn't university, it wasn't good enough. So, but it kind of changed my perspective a bit. And I went to go and look at the college courses, and it was all your typical electrician, construction, but then there was also natural resource programs as well, such as forest technology. And I was like, you know what? Why not? And I came from a big city. I have never hiked before at that point. I had never really gone camping except when I was a kid. I was 100% city girl. That was it. But I applied and I got in, surprisingly.
Before your first semester started, you had to buy some gear for your classes. So can you tell us about this shopping experience and how it affected you?
So previous to this experience, when I thought about shopping, I was shopping for clothes and makeup and that sort of thing. And now I'm shopping for hard hats, chainsaw pants. It's a whole new ballgame for me. My partner at the time came with me to this gear store to look for things. And the first thing I saw when I walked in was a hot pink hard hat. And my eyes got so wide and I was like, that is the hard hat that I need. That one is for me. And I started getting excited seeing all these other pink high-vis vests, anything you can think of. And I started marching over to the pink hard hat. And he goes, don't get that. I was like, why? He's like, if you wear pink, nobody's going to take you seriously. And in my head, I was kind of like, why? And he's like, nobody's going to take you seriously if you wear stuff like that. Just get the orange one, get the orange high-vis vest. You'll be better off. And that stuck with me for a long time while I was going through school, thinking about that, having the need to not buy stuff that I wanted and wearing stuff just to fit in and blend in. From that particular moment, in the back of my head, I think that I spent a lot of time trying not to be exactly who I was and kind of conforming to what the idea of what a forester or somebody in forestry should look like, which in my head was not somebody who wore hot pink and, girly clothes, that sort of thing.
So when you started college, what was the gender diversity like when you started your college courses?
The class split was 60-40 male female, and at that point, that was the most females that they'd ever had in the program.
And what about professors? Was that mostly male as well?
Mostly males. I only had 2 female instructors the whole time that I was in school.
And that was for 2 years, right?
2 years, yeah.
So as for the other women in your class, did they have a different upbringing than you?
Yes. So when I first walked into class, I was excited for my first day of school. So I was dressed nice. I had shorts. I had a nice little cardigan on. I had my purse with me, makeup done, hair done. I walked in and everybody was wearing plaid, exactly what you would think of when you walked into a forestry class. And most of the females in my class either came from a forestry family or grew up kind of in like a rural farm setting. There was a couple of people that had no background in any sort of natural resource program, but most of them, I would say, had those small town living kind of skills.
So did you feel like an outcast coming from such a different background?
At first, absolutely. Like I said, I walked into class and I'm dressed to the nines, ready to start my post-secondary education, and nobody else was there with makeup done, hair done. Everybody looked like they were going to work, basically.
Did you face any specific challenges or disadvantages from having no background in forestry?
Yes. So because I grew up in a city, I didn't spend a lot of time going hiking or camping. I was 100% an indoor girl at that point. So even with the first 5 weeks of my first year in college, we spent it in a field camp, and it was very bare bones, basic camp with these little wood cabins that we had to light a fire every day to keep them warm. We even had to light a fire to heat our shower water, that sort of thing. And I think at that point I realized, I'm not going to be able to do my hair every day. Like, what am I going to do? Even things as simple as spending all day in the pouring rain, or when it's 35 degrees out, spending all day in that. Even something as simple as just walking through the bush, because I had never done that before. And the first time they asked me to do that, I was like, seriously? Like, I'm just supposed to walk in there? Like, there's bears there. I don't know if anybody told you that. And one of the first things that they taught us how to do was navigating in the bush. So we would get a piece of paper that was kind of in a shape of a triangle with bearings and distances, and we were supposed to use our compasses, navigate through the bush using those bearings, and we were supposed to end up at the same point. And I remember just looking at my instructor and I was like, I couldn't believe that I was just going to be like walking in the forest. As far as I was concerned, that was a very dangerous thing to do. And why can't we just do that on the trails that are here where I can see where I'm walking?
So as for gender equality, since you were all doing this for the first time, it was okay. There was no blatant sexism.
Yes. So because we're all playing for the same team, we're all trying to learn the exact same things, we're all, for the most part, new at this, we kind of looked out for each other for the most part.
When you graduated from college, one of your first jobs was working at northern logging camps. So first off, what was it like being a woman in this camp setting, and how did the living situation work?
So for most of the camps that I stayed at, women had their own wing, and so all of the women's bedrooms were on the same side, and they had their own washrooms. But a lot of times the only people that were staying in those rooms were me and the cooks that worked at the logging camps. So I remember my very first time walking into the kitchen and being the only woman there, aside from the cooks, and having everybody stop what they were doing and kind of look at me. And you could feel them kind of snickering to each other about things while they're looking at me. And it was incredibly uncomfortable because I could only imagine like the things that they were saying.
So later on, you went to work at a camp that had co-ed facilities, including bathrooms. So what was it like to navigate such an intimate aspect of your daily life in a co-ed setting?
Awful, especially being used to having a tiny little women's only wing where I'm confident that there's going to be nobody in those washrooms except for the other females that are in the camp. When I first went to that camp, I assumed that the washrooms at the very least would be separate. But unbeknownst to me, as I'm going into the washroom for the first time, I open the door and there's a man using the toilet and he has the door wide open so I can see everything. Immediately back out and I'm like, what? Where am I? Even the showers didn't have locking doors. They just had the normal pull across shower curtains. So I had to ask my male coworkers, can you do your bedtime regime while I'm showering just so that I can have somebody outside on the other side, just in case. Because I did not expect to walk into the washroom and have people just using it with the doors open. I get that maybe they're not used to having females in these camps, but it was an awkward thing to navigate for sure.
So in a primarily male-dominated camp, how did you fit in or try to fit in?
It was hard. It definitely felt like a boys' club, and it was hard to kind of insert myself into those things, especially when you're one of the only females on the crew. It's hard to, guys have the things that they want to talk about, and then you insert a female into it, and it almost changes the dynamic a little bit, or it feels that way. So it was, especially after we would come back from work, it felt hard to socialize with my crew.
Mm-hmm. So you were often kind of left to your own to figure something out to do.
Yeah, most of the time I would retreat back to my room and just go to bed anyways, but you would eat dinner together and they would end up going to the gym with each other, or they would sit there and have a beer after, and you would sit there for it, but you weren't really, I never felt included, if that makes sense.
So what was your typical work schedule when it came to working in camps?
Most of the time it was 10 days on, 4 days off. Especially in forestry, a lot of areas are very remote and hard to access, so it doesn't make sense to do 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday. So most of my time was spent in camps, 10-day shifts.
So how did you navigate those 4 days off?
A lot of the time off I spent recovering, so they never really felt like days off. It sounds great to have 4 days off, but when you've spent the last 10 working, you spend a lot of it either catching up on life stuff, catching up on grocery shopping, laundry, that sort of thing. It made it really difficult to make friends in the times that I was off, especially because I was gone for 10 days at a time. It was hard to build relationships with people. Anytime something was going on, I was always at work, so I couldn't attend. The days that I was home, there was never anything going on, so it made it hard to really establish a life, I guess, outside of work.
I told you.
Oh my god. They're like right there.
I don't want to play anymore.
So, what did a typical day in a camp look like for you?
I would be staying in a camp, but like I would be doing my forestry job like during the day.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So usually wake up around 6 or 7, depending on the time of year. Go and eat breakfast, get my lunch for the day. So I was doing multi-phase timber development at the time, which is basically creating the cut blocks for them to harvest later. So I would be creating boundaries, showing where the road should go, stream assessments, soil assessments, that sort of thing.
And so, when you're doing that type of work, what are the hours like?
Primarily 10 to 12 hours, especially when you're in camp, you want to get the most out of your day. So you spend as long as possible out there. I haven't really spent a lot of time doing anything under 10 hours for field work. So when you're out there, you make the best of your time.
So, moving on a little bit, you had a female boss that played a really significant role in your first real forestry job. So, can you tell us about her and how she influenced you?
Yes, I remember when I first got this job, the hiring manager told me that my female boss was going to contact me and tell me more about the job and when I was starting. And I was so excited to have a female manager. I was like, that's so inspiring. This woman, she's, at the very top of this office that she works out of. This is so exciting. When I finally got started working, she was tough as nails. Okay, this woman did not mess around. It was a little intimidating at first because here I am, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, really excited to get my foot in the industry, and it felt like she chopped me down immediately. My job was incredibly hard. I felt like over the months that I was working there that I couldn't do anything right. I felt like she was yelling at me all the time. At the time, I was full-time and we had 2 male summer students, and I never saw her yell at them, ever. But then there's me, constantly getting yelled at. I remember even the first time I came across a bear while I was working, and let me tell you, the things that you see in the bear awareness videos do not happen in real life. I remember radioing to her and being like, hey, like I've got a bear. And she's like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? Inside, I'm like, please help me. But she's just like, well, I can't, like, I'm on the other end of the block. There's nothing I can do for you. So figure it out. I'm petrified because this is the first bear that I've seen in real life, not in a car driving through Jasper. And I tried to leave the area, but I spooked him when I moved because I don't think he noticed me right away. And he bluff charged me. Terrifying for that to be my first real bear encounter. When I told her that happened, she did come and find me. And I just started bawling because I was terrified. That was not supposed to happen. I even did the whoa bear. The whoa bear did not work. And I was sitting there and I was crying. And she got so upset with me. She was like, why are you crying? She's like, you're going to have to get over your fear of bears or this is not going to work out for you. And that just made me cry more. I was so upset. As the months went on, our relationship didn't change much. I did slowly start to dislike my job in a sense. I was starting to wonder if I was even cut out for forestry because everything I did, I felt like I was doing it wrong. It was never enough. I was working my butt off, trying to impress her so that she didn't yell at me. And it felt like it was never enough. And I remember I was talking with people who worked at another office, and they had a really great crew of people. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why are you guys, like, I feel like I'm doing the same things you are. Why, like, what am I doing wrong? And I realized that it wasn't me. Like, I think my other coworkers were telling me like, no, you're doing a good job. It's, I don't know why she's being so hard on you. And it got to the point where I couldn't even come into the office in the morning and not immediately have criticisms thrown at me. So there was one day that I came in, opened the door, and like clockwork, she started beaking me about something. And I'm not one for confrontation. I would rather just suffer in silence. But something clicked in my brain and I was like, you know what? I was like, you can't talk to me like that. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. All you do is yell at me. You never say anything bad about the other summer students who I feel like I'm doing more work than they are, because I'm spending I'm trying to put in so much more effort to appease her. And while I'm going off on her, I kind of see her face change a little bit and I start to get a little scared because I'm like, oh no, what have I done? But I kept going. And because I'm an emotional person, I start crying while I'm talking about this. And I'm getting so angry. And I basically told her, if this doesn't stop, I'm leaving. And she kind of stops. And this was the kindest that I've ever seen her face at that point. And then she told me, she's like, I have been so hard on you because when I got into the industry, I had to be tough. I had it way harder than you have ever had it, and I wanted to prepare you for this life. And I was kind of taken aback by that, because I was like, if you had such a hard time, wouldn't you want me to have an easier time and help me through it? But she would even say, I always tell the upper management that you're doing so much better than the boys. You're way more productive than them. And I was like, why don't you tell me that? Right? But yeah, it was kind of the first time that we really came to a common ground, I suppose. But it was crazy to me that she would put me through all of that to try to prepare me for it, because I didn't feel like that was right at all.
So what were some key lessons or skills that you learned from this boss that you still carry with you today?
So definitely in my older years, I appreciate what she did a bit more, but I definitely don't take that same approach with new women in the industry. I'm much kinder. I let women know that it's okay to be scared, and you should never feel afraid to say that you're scared. I find with men aren't allowed to be scared, if that makes sense. And when women say that they're scared, it's kind of like, of course she's scared, she's a woman. So I always let new women in the industry know that it's okay to admit that you're scared. When I have summer students, I keep them with me for the first little while, and I slowly kind of push them out to working by themselves. I don't even like working by myself personally. It just kind of comes with the job. If I do get a little buddy with me that day, that's even better. But it takes, if you're not used to it, it takes time to get the confidence to go out on your own. So I always make sure that I basically do the complete opposite of what she did to me, because I don't want to scare women from the industry. I want them to love it as much as I do. And I want them to be inspired to help other women come into the industry.
So looking back on your whole journey from choosing forestry by chance, because it just sounded cool, to becoming established in the field, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
To stand up for yourself, absolutely. And speak up when you feel like that you're not getting the same treatment as other people. I feel like I was set up to fail in forestry a lot of the times, and it took a long time for me to gain the confidence to stand up for myself and say, like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm a competent professional. I can do this. I don't need you to do it. I don't need you to help me with it. Like, I can do it on my own.
So now that it's been 10 years since you've been in forestry, where do you feel like you stand in your industry?
Because I had no background in forestry, I learned a lot of things that were not second nature to me, that might be for somebody who grew up in a completely forestry immersed family. Even changing tires, ratchet straps, anything like that. I feel like because I've had to learn a lot of these skills later on in my life, it's made me, I think about what I'm doing a lot more. I am the most confident than I have ever been. I 100% felt like an underdog through a lot of my career, and I always felt like I had to work that much harder than the boys just to get a little bit of recognition for anything that I did. It didn't matter if I was huffing and puffing all day. It just never seemed like it was enough. But now I feel like I'm a confident forest professional. I don't waver on decisions that I make. I am comfortable enough to ask others questions when I need it. I feel a part of the gang now, if that makes sense.
So what do you personally like to bring to other women who may be interested in forestry or are working in forestry?
I like to use social media to talk about forestry and make videos about what it's like to actually be in forestry, my day-to-day life. I get a lot of messages from other women that are like, wow, I didn't know that this was even a job. I didn't even know that women could do it. There's also great pages on social media, such as Women in Wood, which has become such a great community of women all over that work in natural resource industries, outdoor industries. Even the posts from when I first joined that group are so vastly different than what you see now. It's not so much, oh, I'm experiencing all of this sexism at work. Like, what do I do? Who do I talk to about this? And posts are a lot more positive now. It's a wonderful community, and I'm glad that it exists. It's a great resource for women too.
If our listeners could take away one thing from today's interview, what should it be?
If I asked 10-year-old Courtney if she thought that she would be in forestry working in the bush every day, she probably would have thought you'd be crazy. You just have to try things. It's okay to try things, and you're going to fail. And sometimes you're going to do really well. Other times you're not. But if I gave up the first time I failed, I don't even know where I'd be. I would be out of forestry a long time ago. That's for sure. I still make mistakes, but I'm a lot kinder to myself now. And because of the confidence I have, I can say, you know what, everybody makes mistakes, and I just carry on.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really hope that we inspired some women to get into forestry.
Me too.
And thank you so much to our listeners and to our viewers for tuning in today, and have a wonderful day. See you next time. Bye.